She kicked me out on Christmas morning until I pulled out the black folder that silenced the whole room. I'm Sylvie Martinez, 28 years old, and for 10 years I believed I was the unloved granddaughter in a family that cherished everyone but me. I watched from the sidelines as my cousins received gifts, opportunities, and unconditional love while I got nothing but cold shoulders and forgotten birthdays. Then came the reading of my grandmother's will, and everything I thought I knew about my family shattered like glass. The black envelope I placed on the lawyer's desk that day contained evidence that would destroy their perfect facade forever. If you've ever felt like the forgotten one in your family, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're ready to hear how I discovered the shocking truth about why my family really hated me, and how I made them pay for a decade of lies. Growing up in San Diego, I lived just 20 minutes away from my grandmother Elena's sprawling estate in La Jolla, yet I might as well have been on another planet. Our modest apartment in Normal Heights felt worlds apart from the Mediterranean-style mansion where the rest of my extended family gathered every Sunday for elaborate dinners I was never invited to. My mother, Isabella, was the middle child of 3 sisters. The eldest, Carmen, had married a successful real estate developer and lived in a custom home with her twin daughters, Sofia and Maria. The youngest sister, Rosa, was a celebrated interior designer, married to a plastic surgeon, with a son named Diego, who was my age. Then there was us Mom, a struggling single mother working double shifts as a nurse, and me, the quiet girl who somehow never quite fit into the family picture. I was 8 years old when I first noticed the pattern. Sofia and Maria, my cousins who were just a year older than me, would show up to school after weekends with expensive new clothes, talking about family parties and trips to Disneyland. When I asked Mom why we weren't invited, her face would tighten with an expression I couldn't read back then. "Some families are complicated, mija," she'd say, pulling me closer. "But you and me, we're stronger together. We don't need their approval to be happy." But I was 8. And I desperately wanted to belong somewhere beyond our small apartment with its hand-me-down furniture and empty refrigerator. The divide became more obvious as we grew older. Quinceañeras for Sofia and Maria were lavish affairs held at the country club, with professional photographers and designer dresses. I watched from the edges when Mom managed to get us invited, feeling invisible in my Walmart outfit while everyone else sparkled in custom gowns. Christmas was the worst. We'd drive to Grandma Elena's house on Christmas Eve, and I'd watch my cousins open mountains of carefully wrapped presents while I received a single, obviously last-minute gift, usually something generic like a candle or a gift card to Target for $20. "Grandma doesn't know what you like," Carmen would say with false sympathy when she noticed my disappointed face. "Maybe next year you should make a list." I made lists every year. They were never acknowledged. The pattern continued through high school. While Diego got a new BMW for his 16th birthday, and the twins received matching Jeep Wranglers, I worked part-time at a coffee shop to help Mom with rent and saved for months to buy my own used Honda Civic. When it came time for college, Sofia and Maria were accepted to USC and UCLA respectively. Diego chose Stanford. Their tuition, room, and board were covered entirely by the family. When I was accepted to San Diego State with partial academic scholarships, I still needed to take out loans and work full-time to make ends meet. "Education is so important," Grandma Elena would tell everyone at Sunday dinners I occasionally attended. "I'm so proud of my grandchildren for working so hard in school." The irony wasn't lost on me that I had the highest GPA of all the grandchildren, yet I was the only one struggling to pay for my education. The emotional distance hurt more than the financial inequality. While my cousins had inside jokes with Grandma Elena, shared memories of family vacations and bonding experiences, I remained perpetually on the outside. They'd reference trips to Europe, skiing in Aspen, Summer's and Martha's Vineyard adventures I'd only hear about secondhand. "Why don't they like us, Mom?" I asked during my junior year of college, after another Christmas where I'd felt like an unwelcome guest at my own family gathering. Mom was quiet for a long time, staring out the window of our apartment at the city lights below. "Sometimes families have old wounds that never heal properly," she finally said. "But that's their loss, Sylvie. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. And anyone who can't see how special you are doesn't deserve to be in your life." I graduated summa cum laude, with a degree in accounting, and immediately found work at a prestigious firm downtown. While my cousins floundered in their careers, Sophia changed majors 3 times before dropping out. Maria was on her second failed business venture funded by family money, and Diego had been fired from 2 entry-level positions his father had secured for him. I was building something real through my own merit. But still, the family dynamic never changed. I was the afterthought, the cousin who was tolerated but never embraced. Everything shifted on a rainy Tuesday in March when Mom called me at work, her voice shaky with grief. "Sylvie, you need to come home. Grandma Elena passed away this morning." The funeral was held at the same Catholic church where the family had celebrated weddings and baptisms for 3 generations. I sat in the back row with Mom, watching as Carmen, Rosa, and their families occupied the front pews like royalty. Sophia gave a tearful eulogy about her beloved grandmother's wisdom and generosity. Diego read a poem he claimed Grandma Elena had loved. Maria shared memories of cooking lessons and shopping trips. No one asked me to speak. After the service, during the reception at the country club, I overheard Carmen talking to Rosa near the dessert table. "Thank God the will reading is tomorrow, and we can finally put all this behind us," Carmen was saying. "Elena was getting so forgetful toward the end. I'm just relieved she had the foresight to set up that trust fund structure years ago." "The house alone is worth $3 million, Rosa replied. "Split 3 ways between Sophia, Maria, and Diego. They'll each have a beautiful inheritance to start their adult lives." 3 ways. I felt the familiar sting of exclusion, even in death. The next morning, we gathered in the law offices of Patterson Associates for the formal reading of the will. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was an elderly man who had known our family for decades. He greeted everyone with professional warmth, then gestured for us to take seats around his large conference table. Carmen sat at the head with Sophia and Maria flanking her. Rosa positioned herself opposite with Diego beside her. Mom and I took chairs at the far end, our usual place on the family periphery. "Before we begin," Mr. Patterson said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to acknowledge that this is always a difficult process. Elena was very specific about her wishes, and I trust you'll all respect her final decisions." He opened a leather portfolio and began reading. The will started with small bequests, jewelry to Carmen and Rosa, personal items to various grandchildren, charitable donations to organizations Grandma Elena had supported. Then came the significant assets. "To my granddaughter Sophia Martinez Blackwell, I leave my collection of art and antiques, valued at approximately $200,000. Sophia gasped with delight, squeezing her mother's hand. "To my granddaughter Maria Martinez Blackwell, I leave my portfolio of investment properties, currently valued at $400,000. Maria started crying with joy. "To my grandson Diego Herrera, I leave my stocks and bonds portfolio, valued at approximately $350,000. Diego pumped his fist, then caught himself and tried to look appropriately solemn. "The family home and primary estate, valued at $3.2 million, will be..." Mr. Patterson paused, looking directly at me. "Left to my granddaughter Sylvie Isabella Martinez." The silence in the room was deafening. Carmen's face went white. Rosa's mouth fell open. Sophia, Maria, and Diego stared at me with expressions of pure shock. "There must be some mistake," Carmen finally managed. "Sylvie isn't... she's barely part of the family. She hardly ever visited. Mr. Patterson's expression remained neutral. There's no mistake. Elena was very clear about this decision, but we're not finished yet. He continued reading. Additionally, Sylvie Isabella Martinez is to receive the contents of the safe deposit box at First National Bank, box number 2847, along with all accompanying documentation and correspondence contained therein. My hands were shaking. I had no idea Grandma Elena even knew my middle name, let alone that she'd leave me anything, much less everything. This is insane, Rosa said, her voice rising. Sylvie was never close to Mama. She missed half the family gatherings. We were the ones who took care of Elena in her final years. Which brings me to the final portion of the will, Mr. Patterson said firmly. Elena included a personal letter to be read aloud at this time. He withdrew a sealed envelope from the portfolio and carefully opened it. To my family, he began reading in Grandma Elena's distinctive voice. If you are hearing this letter, it means I am gone and you are learning about my final wishes. I know some of you will be surprised by my decisions, particularly regarding Sylvie. Everyone's eyes turned to me. I felt like I was underwater, unable to process what was happening. The truth is, Sylvie was always the granddaughter who reminded me most of myself at her age, independent, hard-working, and determined to succeed without asking for handouts. While I watched my other grandchildren coast through life on family money, Sylvie built something real through her own effort and determination. Carmen made a noise like she'd been slapped. But more importantly, Sylvie was the only one who never stopped trying to connect with me, despite years of being pushed away by her aunts. What she doesn't know, what none of you know, is that I was aware of how you treated her all these years. I watched you exclude her, diminish her achievements, and make her feel unwanted at family gatherings. You thought I was too old and out of touch to notice, but I saw everything. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of Mr. Patterson's voice reading Grandma's final words. Sylvie, I hope you can forgive an old woman for not speaking up sooner. I was weak, and I let your aunts dictate the family dynamics because it was easier than confronting their cruelty. But I want you to know that every Christmas when you sat alone while your cousins opened their expensive gifts, every birthday when you were forgotten, every family celebration where you were treated like an outsider, I noticed, and my heart broke for you. Tears were streaming down my face now. The money and property I'm leaving you isn't charity, it's recognition. Recognition of your strength, your character, and your place as my true heir. Use it to build the life you deserve, free from the toxic dynamics that have held our family back for too long. Mr. Patterson looked up from the letter. The will is signed, witnessed, and legally binding. There are no provisions for contest. Carmen was the first to explode. This is completely unacceptable. That house has been in our family for 60 years. Sylvie has no connection to it, no memories there. We're contesting this immediately. As I mentioned, Mr. Patterson said calmly, the will was structured specifically to prevent contests. It's ironclad. What about the safe deposit box? Rosa demanded. What's in it? I don't know, Mr. Patterson replied. Elena gave me the key and specific instructions that only Sylvie was to access it. As the family erupted into arguments around me, I sat in stunned silence. Everything I thought I knew about my grandmother, about my place in the family, had just been turned upside down. But underneath the shock, something else was growing. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen by someone in my family. Grandma Elena had been watching, had been caring, even when I couldn't see it. 3 days later, I went to the bank to open the safe deposit box. My hands trembled as I inserted the key and lifted the metal lid. Inside was a thick manila envelope labeled, "For Sylvie, the truth about your family." Beneath it were stacks of documents, photographs, and what appeared to be financial records going back decades. I took everything home and spread it out on my dining room table. What I discovered in those documents would change everything I thought I knew about my family's treatment of me. The first item was a letter in Grandma Elena's handwriting, dated just 3 months before her death. My dearest Sylvie, it began. If you're reading this, then the will has been read and you're probably confused about why I left you everything. The truth is complicated and painful, but you deserve to know why your mother and you were treated so differently from the rest of the family. My heart was pounding as I continued reading. Your mother Isabella was my favorite daughter, though I never told her. She was kind, compassionate, and genuinely cared about others. When she got pregnant with you at 19, Carmen and Rosa convinced me that she was irresponsible and would drag down the family's reputation. They pressured me to cut her off financially unless she gave you up for adoption. I had to stop reading and catch my breath. Mom had never told me any of this. Isabella refused, of course. She chose you over our money, over our approval, over everything. Carmen and Rosa were furious. They told me that if I supported Isabella's decision, they would cut me off from their children, my other grandchildren. They knew my greatest fear was losing my family, and they used it against me. The letter continued for several pages, detailing years of manipulation by my aunts. They had systematically poisoned Grandma Elena against Mom and me, threatening to withhold visits from Sofia, Maria, and Diego whenever she showed us kindness. They controlled her access to her grandchildren like weapons, ensuring that any favoritism shown to me would result in punishment. I was weak, Sylvie. I chose the easy path of appeasing Carmen and Rosa rather than standing up for what was right. Every birthday I missed. Every Christmas where I watched you sit alone. Every family gathering where you were made to feel unwanted. These are my greatest regrets. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. The financial documents in the safe deposit box showed that for the past 10 years, Grandma Elena had been secretly funding a trust account in my name. Every Christmas, when I'd received a $20 gift card while my cousins got thousands of dollars worth of presents, she'd been depositing $5,000 into my account. Every birthday that was forgotten by the family had been marked by a substantial contribution to my fund. The account now contained over $300,000. But there was more. Credit card statements and bank records showed that Carmen and Rosa had been stealing from Grandma Elena for years. The loans they'd taken for their children's educations had never been repaid. The family vacations, the expensive cars, the down payments on houses, all funded by Grandma Elena's money with promises of repayment that never materialized. Most damning were the forged documents. Carmen had been signing Grandma Elena's name on financial documents for the past 3 years, gradually transferring assets into accounts controlled by her and Rosa. They'd been systematically looting their mother's estate while she was still alive, planning to leave just enough to avoid suspicion. There were recordings too. Grandma Elena had apparently been making audio notes for months before her death, documenting conversations where Carmen and Rosa had bragged about their manipulations. In one particularly chilling recording, I heard Rosa laughing about how stupid little Sylvie would never know how much money was being spent on the other grandchildren while she worked her way through college. In another, Carmen discussed plans to have Grandma Elena declared incompetent so they could gain control of her finances entirely. The final item in the envelope was a letter of instruction from Grandma Elena to me. Sylvie, I'm giving you this evidence not for revenge but for justice. Your aunts have committed fraud, elder abuse, and theft. They've stolen not just money, but years of love and connection between us. I'm too old and too tired to fight them myself, but you're strong enough to make this right. The choice is yours. You can confront them privately and demand restitution, or you can take this evidence to the authorities and let justice take its course. Either way, I want you to know that every dollar they stole, every opportunity they denied you, every moment of happiness they took from our family, It's all documented here. Use your inheritance wisely, my dear granddaughter. Build the life you deserve and remember that you are loved more than you ever knew. I sat at my dining room table until well past midnight, reading through documents and listening to recordings. By morning, I had made my decision. The family meeting I requested was held at the law offices of Patterson Associates, the same place where the will had been read 2 weeks earlier. I told them I had some questions about the estate and wanted to discuss the transition of assets in a neutral location. Everyone came. Carmen and Rosa arrived with their own lawyer, clearly prepared for a fight about the inheritance. Sophia, Maria, and Diego looked uncomfortable but curious. Mom came with me, still processing the revelation about Grandma Elena's secret support. "Thank you all for coming," I began, standing at the head of the conference table where Mr. Patterson had read the will. "I know these past few weeks have been difficult for everyone, and I wanted to address some concerns about Grandma Elena's final wishes." Carmen leaned forward aggressively. "Sylvie, we appreciate that you want to do the right thing here. Obviously, Elena wasn't thinking clearly toward the end, and we think the fairest solution would be to divide the estate equally among all the grandchildren." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase, "I think Grandma Elena was thinking more clearly than any of us realized." I withdrew the manila envelope from the safe deposit box and placed it on the table. "This contains documentation that Grandma Elena had been collecting for years. She was more aware of family dynamics than we gave her credit for." Rosa shifted uncomfortably. "What kind of documentation?" Instead of answering directly, I pulled out one of the audio recordings and placed a small speaker on the table. "Let me play something for you." Rosa's voice filled the room, crystal clear from the recording Grandma Elena had made 6 months before her death. "I can't believe the old bat is still holding out on us. We should have had her declared incompetent years ago. At least when she's finally gone, we won't have to pretend to care about Isabella's little bastard anymore." Carmen's voice responded. "The lawyer says we can contest any will that leaves significant assets to Sylvie. She's not really family anyway. Isabella should have given her up for adoption, like we told her to." The room went dead silent. Sophia and Maria looked horrified. Diego stared at his mother with disgust. "There are hours of these recordings," I said calmly. "Grandma Elena documented everything." I pulled out the financial records next, spreading them across the table like evidence in a criminal trial. These show the systematic theft of Grandma Elena's assets over the past decade: forged signatures, unauthorized transfers, fictional loans that were never intended to be repaid. The total amount approaches $2 million. Carmen's lawyer was frantically taking notes, his face growing paler with each document I revealed. "This trust account," I continued, pointing to the bank statements, "shows that while you were stealing from Grandma Elena and telling everyone I was unworthy of family consideration, she was actually supporting me the entire time. Every cruel birthday, every excluded Christmas, every time you made me feel worthless, she was secretly making sure I'd be taken care of." "You can't prove any of this," Rosa said, but her voice was shaking. "Actually, I can. I've already consulted with both the district attorney's office and the state's elder abuse division. They're very interested in this evidence." I looked around the table at their faces. Sophia and Maria were crying. Diego looked like he wanted to disappear. Carmen and Rosa were calculating their next move. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You have 2 choices. Option 1, we handle this privately. You sign agreements acknowledging the theft and fraud. You make full restitution for what you've stolen, and you publicly acknowledge the truth about how you've treated me and my mother for the past decade. Option 2, I turn all of this evidence over to the authorities, and you face criminal charges for elder abuse, fraud, and theft. Your children will have to watch you be arrested and prosecuted. The family name you've been so concerned about protecting will be destroyed in a very public trial." Carmen found her voice first. "This is blackmail." No, I replied firmly. This is accountability. For the first time in your lives, you're facing consequences for your actions. I pulled out a prepared document. If you choose option 1, this agreement outlines the terms: full restitution of stolen assets, a public apology to be read at the next family gathering, and a written acknowledgement of your actions to be shared with everyone who witnessed years of your treatment of me. We'll never sign that, Rosa said defiantly. That's your choice, but I should mention that I've already had this conversation with the prosecutor's office. They've indicated that cooperation and restitution would be viewed favorably when considering charges, while continued denial and refusal to make amends would likely result in the maximum penalties. The room fell silent except for the sound of Sophia's quiet crying. Finally, Diego spoke up. Mom, is it true? Did you really steal from Grandma? Rosa couldn't look at her son. It wasn't stealing, we were managing her finances. She was getting confused. She wasn't confused, I said, pulling out Grandma Elena's handwritten notes. She documented every conversation, every manipulation, every lie you told. She knew exactly what you were doing. I handed Diego one of the letters where Grandma Elena specifically wrote about his mother's behavior. As he read it, his face crumpled with shame. How could you do this? He whispered to Rosa. How could you steal from your own mother and then make Sylvie feel like she didn't belong in our family? The family dynamics were shifting in real time. Sophia and Maria were staring at their mother with horror and disgust. Diego had moved his chair away from Rosa as if her behavior was contagious. We need time to think about this, Carmen's lawyer interjected. You have until Friday, I replied. After that, I file the criminal complaints. As the meeting broke up, Sophia approached me hesitantly. Sylvie, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. In all these years, I thought you just didn't want to be close to us. I tried, I said quietly. For 28 years, I tried to be part of this family, but every time I reached out, I was pushed away. Maria joined her sister. The things Mom said on those recordings, that's not who I want to be. That's not the family I want to be part of. Then don't be, I replied. You get to choose who you are, independent of what your parents did. Diego had been listening to our conversation. Would you give us a chance to make this right? Not just the legal stuff, but really make it right? I looked at these 3 young adults who had been given everything while I received nothing, and realized they were as much victims of Carmen and Rosa's manipulation as I was. They'd been taught that I was less worthy, less deserving, less important. But they were old enough now to see the truth. That depends on what making it right looks like, I said. Over the next 3 days, Carmen and Rosa's united front crumbled. Sophia and Maria refused to speak to their mother until she took responsibility for her actions. Diego moved out of Rosa's house and into his own apartment, funded by money he'd saved from his inheritance, rather than accepting any more family assistance. The pressure from their own children, combined with the looming threat of criminal prosecution, finally broke them. On Thursday afternoon, I received a call from Carmen's lawyer. They wanted to accept option 1. The formal signing took place on Friday morning. Carmen and Rosa signed full confessions acknowledging their theft from Grandma Elena and their systematic emotional abuse of me and my mother. They agreed to make restitution payments of $50,000 each per year until the stolen money was fully repaid. Most importantly, they signed agreements to publicly acknowledge their behavior at the next family gathering, Grandma Elena's memorial service, which we had postponed until this legal matter was resolved. The memorial service was held 3 weeks later at the same country club where we'd held the funeral reception. But this time, the family dynamics were completely different. I stood at the podium where Carmen had once given a hypocritical eulogy about family values, holding the microphone with steady hands. Before we remember Grandma Elena today, I began, there are some truths that need to be shared. I looked out at the assembled family and friends, many of whom had witnessed years of my exclusion and marginalization. Many of you have wondered over the years why my mother and I seemed distant from the rest of the family. You might have assumed we weren't interested in being close, or that there were personality conflicts that kept us apart. I paused, letting the room settle into complete silence. The truth is that for 28 years, I was systematically excluded from this family by people who wanted to maintain control over Grandma Elena's affections and resources. My aunts, Carmen and Rosa, spent decades manipulating family dynamics to ensure that I felt unwanted and unloved, while they positioned their own children as the favored grandchildren. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several family friends were nodding, as if this explanation finally made sense of things they'd observed but never understood. What you didn't see was that Grandma Elena was watching all of this. She was documenting the cruelty, the exclusion, the emotional abuse, and she was secretly supporting me through it all, even while being pressured to maintain distance. I pulled out Grandma Elena's final letter and read portions of it aloud, including her acknowledgement of watching me sit alone at Christmas while my cousins were showered with gifts, and her regret at not speaking up sooner. Carmen and Rosa have acknowledged in writing that they engaged in financial elder abuse, stealing nearly $2 million from Grandma Elena over the past decade. They've also acknowledged their systematic emotional abuse of me and my mother, designed to maintain their control over family resources. The room was completely silent now. You could hear people breathing. I'm sharing this not for revenge, but for closure. Grandma Elena wanted the truth to be known. She wanted people to understand why she made the decisions she did in her final will, and why she chose to leave her primary estate to the granddaughter who never stopped trying to love her, even when that love wasn't visibly returned. I looked directly at Carmen and Rosa, who were sitting in the front row looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. I forgive you, I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean pretending that what happened was acceptable. It means choosing to move forward without carrying the poison of hatred. After the service, the response was overwhelming. Family friends approached me to apologize for not speaking up when they'd witnessed my exclusion. Distant relatives shared their own stories of wondering why I was treated differently. But the most meaningful conversations were with Sophia, Maria, and Diego. I want to learn how to be a real cousin to you, Sophia said, tears in her eyes. Not because we're supposed to be family, but because I genuinely want to know who you are when you're not defending yourself from our family's cruelty. I'd like that, I replied honestly. Maria had been quiet through most of the memorial service, but she pulled me aside afterward. I keep thinking about all the Christmas mornings when you sat there with your $20 gift card while we opened thousands of dollars worth of presents. How did you not hate us? Sometimes I did, I admitted, but mostly I just felt sad. I wanted to belong somewhere. You belong with us now, she said firmly, if you want to. Diego's apology was the most heartfelt. I'm ashamed that I never questioned why you were treated differently. I just accepted it as normal because it benefited me. That's not the kind of person I want to be. Then don't be that person, I said. You get to choose who you become from this point forward. 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The inheritance from Grandma Elena allowed me to quit my demanding job and start my own accounting firm, specializing in helping families navigate complex financial situations and avoid the kind of exploitation that had happened in my own family. Mom and I used part of the money to take the European vacation we'd always dreamed about, but never been able to afford. For 2 weeks, we explored Italy and Spain, making new memories unburdened by old family dynamics. The house in La Jolla had been where I'd felt most excluded and unwanted, but I decided to keep it as a symbol of transformation. I converted Grandma Elena's art studio into a home office and turned the formal dining room where I'd sat in silence through so many uncomfortable family gatherings into a warm, welcoming space where I now host regular dinners for my real chosen family friends, who love me for who I am, not what I can provide. Sofia, Maria, and Diego have become genuine parts of my life. We meet for coffee regularly, text each other funny memes, and they've helped me understand what it feels like to have siblings who actually care about your well-being. The relationship is still developing, but it's based on authenticity rather than obligation. Carmen and Rosa are making their restitution payments as agreed, though our relationship remains formal and distant. They attend family gatherings when I host them, but the old power dynamic has been permanently shattered. They can no longer use emotional manipulation or financial control to get their way because everyone now knows the truth about their past behavior. The most healing part of this entire experience has been learning that I was loved all along. Grandma Elena's letters and recordings revealed someone who had been watching me with pride and affection for years, even when she couldn't express it openly. The secret trust fund wasn't just money, it was proof that someone had believed in me when I felt most alone. I keep Grandma Elena's final letter framed in my home office, particularly the part where she wrote, "Sylvie, you were always the granddaughter who reminded me most of myself, independent, hardworking, and determined to succeed without asking for handouts. I watched you build something real through your own effort and determination, and I was proud every single day." The black envelope that I'd prepared for that family meeting had contained years of pain, documentation of abuse, and evidence of theft. But it also contained something else: the power to reclaim my own story and redefine what family means. I learned that blood relationships don't automatically create love, respect, or loyalty. Those things have to be earned and maintained through consistent actions over time. I also learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, even when the people hurting you are supposed to love you. Most importantly, I discovered that being the forgotten one in a dysfunctional family isn't actually a punishment, it's protection. While my cousins were learning to depend on manipulation and handouts, I was developing real strength, genuine skills, and authentic character. The inheritance was never really about the money or the house. It was about recognition, validation, and the knowledge that someone had been paying attention all along. Grandma Elena's final gift wasn't just financial security, it was the truth and the power that comes with finally understanding your own story. Today, when people ask me about my family, I tell them about the Sunday dinners I host at the La Jolla house, where laughter fills rooms that used to echo with tension. I tell them about my cousins who have learned what it means to build genuine relationships based on mutual respect. I tell them about my mother who finally understands that choosing love over approval was always the right decision. And I tell them about my grandmother, who spent her final years secretly documenting the truth because she knew that someday justice would matter more than keeping the peace. The black envelope changed everything. But the real transformation happened when I finally understood that I had never been the problem in my family's dysfunction. I had been the solution they were too blind to see. Have you ever discovered shocking truths about your family that completely changed how you saw your past? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the people who claim to love us the most are the ones causing the most damage, and it takes incredible courage to face that truth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family secrets, personal transformation, and finding the strength to reclaim your own narrative. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in feeling like the outsider in their own family. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself once you know the truth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most beautiful transformations. The Black Envelope: How I Exposed My Family's Decade-Long Lies at Grandma's Funeral.